Hey everybody, it's Abishur Prakash or Mr. Geopolitics. Since Trump was reelected as President of the United States, there has been a lot of thinking and a lot of debate about what he is planning for America and America's position in the world. And everything that he's doing comes from this ideology of America first, the idea that America's interests and America's needs should be put ahead of America's commitments to other nations, America's ideas, etc., etc. But most of the world is misunderstanding what America First is. America First is a complete overhaul in how America thinks about its relationship with the world at the most fundamental levels, especially in Trump's second term. America First is more akin to a Marshall Plan for the US. It is the new geostrategy of America. And only by understanding the holistic new big picture of America, understanding the many layers of America First, can anybody, be it a business or a government or an institution, properly and accurately and carefully respond or even preempt what Trump is doing. So this video is about what America First really means, what it really is as a strategy. Now, before we get into what America First really is, we have to understand what America First isn't. America First is not about trade, about tariffs, about immigration. America First is about the changing philosophy of the US. So to start with, America First is not about Trump going after Canada and Mexico on trade, Trump threatening the EU with tariffs, Trump doing a 60% flat tax on China. These are very tactical moves. These are very short-term moves. These are moves that the world is used to when it thinks about Trump. Trump is big on trade and to bring nations to the trade table to get certain concessions to attract global capital into the US economy. Trump is focusing on tariffs. But tariffs, border challenges, illegal immigration are incredibly low on the priority list when it comes to what America First is. So America First is not about those things. It is about something far more. So what is America First about? A few years ago, when I was on vacation, I was looking out at the beach that I was on, and it came to my mind, this was during Trump's first term, it came to my mind that what America has built after World War II, it is no longer standing by. That America is realizing that the architecture that it built, the ideas which it deployed and pushed and promoted are no longer working in America's favor. Free trade has become dominated by China. America's security commitments are not being viewed as a way to protect the free world. Now they're being viewed as America being overburdened, overextended, and more importantly, in today's world, where there's a war in Europe and a war in the Middle East, America's security commitments are being viewed as inconsequential, as unable to actually stop flashpoints from exploding. Other ideas like global integration are being shot as ideology and nationalism, and other geopolitical hangups that nations have are coming in the way of new rounds of economic integration and trade integration, and nations holding hands as they were for decades. So America is realizing that the entirety of what it built since the end of World War II, the entirety of what has governed the world and spun the world and kept the world humming to America's beat, kept the world moving to America's beat, is now working against America, or in many ways is breaking down. And it is from this realization, this acceptance in Trump's camp, that Trump and his people are starting to design a new architecture for America that puts America first, a new kind of trajectory, a new kind of footprint, a new kind of design for America, not necessarily for the world, that puts America first. So when looking at this, at what Trump is doing from this understanding, from this angle, that Trump is not thinking in a short-term tactical way, that Trump's ideas don't revolve just around tariffs or immigration, in which, in many ways, tariffs and immigration stem and flow from this new America First big picture. Now it's clear how and why Trump is taking certain steps. Because when America is building this new design, as America moves forward in this new direction, its old alliances matter less. Its old agreements matter less. Its old beliefs matter less. Its old commitments matter less. In many ways, all of that old way of doing things is becoming insignificant to America in Washington. And that's why the US is more than willing to collide with countries like Canada. The US is more than willing to entertain ideas, radical ideas, like either absorbing Canada or redrawing the US-Canada border. That's why Trump is threatening at times, without mentioning it explicitly, to completely pull America out of its security commitments to Europe. This is not about Europe not paying enough. This is not about Canada being a source of fentanyl into the US. This is about America no longer wanting to stand by what it built, what the rest of the world still relies on. So this is a fundamental 180 in America's relationship with the entire world. And unless nations and businesses look at this, look at what America is doing from this angle, from this vantage point, they will struggle to understand and keep up and respond to what Trump is doing. Because once again, this is not short-term tactical thinking. This is the new American geostrategy. This is what is going to define America's footprint for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So if this is how America is thinking about the world now, if this is what America First really means at its core, then there are some big consequences. There are some really different decisions, very radical decisions, reorientation, recalibration of America vis-a-vis its relationship with the world. There are 5 key takeaways here that need to be understood. The first is that as America pursues its new America First doctrine, the world is going to become more vertical. The vertical world is an expression of mine where nations are establishing walls and barriers, economic walls, ideological walls, technological walls, political walls. The world is becoming vertical. And as this happens, the world is breaking up into camps. As America moves largely in a unilateral way, in a new direction towards new horizons, and is prepared to walk away from its closest allies and partners, it is going to split the world. US allies will be forced to redesign everything, to huddle closely together to deal with the shocks that America is unleashing, and the rest of the world, watching America behave this way, watching America take these steps, will be forced to turn to their own blocks, their own regional setups, their own new alliances to deal with the disruption and the uncertainty that America's new movements will create. So the first is that the world is going to become more vertical and the world is going to split up into camps. The second takeaway is that US alliances are going to fundamentally change. The US is entering a period where it's going to redesign its alliances and identify new alliances which matter more. And specifically, this has to do with the US relationships with its Western allies. America is going to start to look from security to trade to intelligence to other types of agreements and deals that America has signed, and piece by piece either redesign them or shred them. And if they are redesigned, they will be redesigned in a way that greatly favors the US. And this is going to apply from the upcoming talks on the USMCA, to the next chapter of NATO, to what America does with its Asian allies, since security is a big focus in this new America First doctrine. It won't just apply to US security commitments to Europe, it will also apply to US security commitments in Asia. Asia so far hasn't dealt with the spotlight. Soon the spotlight will be on countries like South Korea, Japan, potentially even the Philippines and Australia. So the US is going to redesign its alliances. And as the US redesigns its most key alliances, other countries will be watching, other superpowers will be watching, hoping to either leverage or exploit what America is doing. If America walks away from certain security commitments, other adversaries of America, other rising superpowers who are trying to stay non-aligned, may try to use this geopolitical change to their own advantage. That's the second takeaway. The third takeaway is that the collision between the US and its key competitors and its key adversaries fundamentally changes. There has been a lot of analysis and a lot of prediction that Trump is going to clash with China after he wins the election. His rhetoric during the campaign trail that he's going to have a 60% tariff on Chinese imports created huge fears that the worst economic war in all of history may begin after Trump assumes the presidency. But in this new America First doctrine, America's outlook towards China is very different. Yes, America still wants to be the number one power, wants to call the shots, but how America does this changes. America going at it alone effectively means that America may carve out its own space in the world for itself and let other nations figure out their own regions, their own spheres of influence. So this is no longer about the US and China colliding to define the fate of the world, to call the shots for everybody, as it has been for more than 2 decades now. Now, as America First is unpacked a bit more, Trump may be setting America in a direction where the US will be okay with China expanding in certain areas, where Russia has its own sphere of influence, and instead of trying to change that status quo, that could become the accepted environment in the world. So this fundamentally changes the decisions America will make towards these nations. Instead of collision, where America seeks to change how these nations are behaving, there could be a different strategy, a different response, a different dance. So the US competition and collision with its chief adversaries fundamentally changes in the new America First doctrine. The fourth takeaway is that who will hold up the old American architecture? Will it be Europe? Will it be Japan? Will it be a mix mash of different countries? What America built, even if it walks away from it, America will not be necessarily ending it either. Just because America walks away from it doesn't mean that architecture suddenly disappears. Large chunks of the world are still spinning around what America built after the Second World War. So these nations have a big question mark over their heads. Will they stand by, pick up the slack, take up the mantle of responsibility, and control and redesign and reshape and rejig what America built to suit their own agendas? Or will they too walk away from what America built and build something else? And most likely it will be a hybrid, holding on to what America built while also trying to build something new. But in this is a separate dilemma, which is who will take up the mantle of responsibility in the short term. It may not be a Western country. China could take up the mantle of responsibility for upholding global free trade, for upholding global climate commitments. Europe could take up a different mantle of responsibility. Russia could attempt to take up a certain mantle of responsibility. India could attempt to take up a certain mantle of responsibility. But specifically, if it's China that takes the charge in certain areas, then once again it puts the world in a state of flux. What America built, what America is now walking away from, may now be utilized by China to expand the Chinese influence. So the next chapter of China's global power projection may revolve around using the US architecture, picking up the responsibility for it, and attempting to convince the world that China is the new guardian of what America once stood by. So a very different spin on what happens next. The fifth and final takeaway is that just as America will walk away from certain alliances, it will also seek to form new strategic alliances. And two of the most significant alliances could be between the US and Saudi Arabia and between the US and India. America, in this new doctrine, America building something new for itself, is identifying nations that benefit America today, not benefit America yesterday. And in that outlook, America may very well walk away from the G7 and focus more on specific rising superpowers like in the Middle East, like in Asia, and seek to integrate America along a new axis, seek to drive new deals, new projects, new geoeconomic agreements that put America first, but also complement the needs and desires of those nations. So as America walks away from certain alliances, it will be walking towards other alliances too. And these alliances will then compete with the old alliances to shape the world. So out of America's changing positions, out of America's changing romance regarding certain nations, a new kind of geopolitical confusion could be unleashed. So that's 5 key takeaways from the new America First. As we all understand now what America First really means, these are 5 consequences for the world, for nations, for America, for its adversaries. But after making sense of these takeaways, there's another element to also consider, which is that strangely, the world was putting America first for decades, specifically even the Western world. The Western foreign policy was American foreign policy. The global economic structure was America's global economic structure. The global institutions that have weaved the world together were developed and designed by the US. So in many ways, as strange as it sounds, nations have been putting America first. America's desires became the world's desires. And equally important, nations who America viewed as outcasts became the outcasts of the world. Nobody wanted to be in America's bad books. But now America is saying the world hasn't been putting America first. From surface, this doesn't make sense. But now unpacking what Trump is really thinking, what him and his team are really imagining, there is clear misalignment. The big question is, as Trump sets the ball rolling in this direction, as Trump takes more bold, more radical steps in the world, whether the day will come when Washington looks back and misses the time when the world was really putting America first. Because as America goes at it alone, other nations will be forced to do a range of things, from putting America last to putting themselves first. And this is going to further upend the world stage. I hope you resonated with this video insight. Leave your comments below and talk soon.